Hello guys, very happy to welcome you here in Frankfurt in our Airbus A320 simulator. Shortly introduce myself, my name is Nils. I'm flying the Boeing 777 for Lufthansa Cargo, a first officer. But before that I was flying the Airbus A320, like you can see it today, for 2.5 years in Belgium. So my goal today is to show you around here in the cockpit, to show you what you can see, what knobs and switches we have here. Then we'll do a takeoff in Frankfurt, do a quick traffic pattern so I can show you around my hometown Frankfurt, do a little sightseeing tour, and then we turn back to Frankfurt airport and do a landing here. And after that I'm happy to answer all your questions you have about aviation, about pilot's life, about me becoming a pilot. So whatever you ever wanted to ask a pilot, feel free, and I'm really happy to see you all in our Zoom video chat. I know it's a really difficult time right now with Corona. Everybody was hit quite hard. So I'm especially happy, even though we cannot connect physically, we can connect via a video chat and see each other and still connect the world. So that is a really nice thing to do. Really happy and really looking forward to see you guys and to answer all your questions. So guys, first thing I want to show you are the primary flight controls, so how we can fly the aircraft basically. So here in the shadow you can see the side stick, which is a really cool invention from Airbus. Airbus actually was the first company who invented the side stick and the fly-by-wire system. So before that, the classical aircraft had like a big yoke, and then there were basically steel ropes which were going through the whole aircraft to the elevator and ailerons to control them, hydraulic motor, and then give the inputs from the pilot to the flight controls. So Airbus changed that system, so they changed to electronic signals. So if you give a input here at the side stick, electronic signals are going through computers. They're checking if the signal the pilot was giving was a good input, and then they forward the signal to a hydraulic motor at the aileron or elevator, or the rudder, and then we can steer basically the aircraft. So how does it work basically? So actually it's pretty simple. If we want to go up, so fly in the air, we will pull the side stick backwards. So the elevator here in the back, hope you can see it, it's a rear part here, is moving up. So the nose is rising and we're going into the air. The other direction, again, if you go with the side stick going down, the elevator is moving down and the nose is going down, so we're going into a descent. Same thing going left or right. So if we want to go left, we take our side stick and move it to the left. The aircraft will roll to the left. So for that we have the ailerons, which are here at the wings, which roll the aircraft into a left or right direction, and we go into a turn. So from that side, pretty simple so far, right? There's just one special thing, which is really different to driving a car. So if you're driving a car, want to make a turn, we have the steering wheel, go to the left or to the right and hold the steering wheel as long as we want to hold the turn, right? So if you would do that with the aircraft and hold the side stick all the time to the left or to the right, the aircraft would roll and roll and roll, and we will go on the head, what we of course don't want. So we take our side stick, move it to the left or to the right as long as we have our position where we can make our turn. Then we release the side stick, goes back to neutral, and the aircraft will continue to fly the turn as long as we keep it into that position. So as soon as we are at the end of our turn, we will just move it to the other side, so in that case to the right side, wings going level again, and then we're flying straight ahead. Same thing going up and down. If we would continue to pull backwards the side stick, at a certain point the aircraft will be on the head again. So as soon as we have the nose at the position we want it for the climb, we just release the side stick and the aircraft will continue to climb. So that's basically already our most important thing, how to control the aircraft. Sounds so far pretty easy, right? So here in the middle we have our thrust levers. So with the thrust levers we can control the speed of the aircraft or how much power we give to the engines. So we have a left engine and a right engine. Usually we will always use them simultaneously. The only case we don't use it simultaneously is if we have an engine failure. But today we just want to talk about the normal case. So when we go to the takeoff roll, to the runway, we'll start giving thrust, moving the thrust levers fully forward to the takeoff go-around position. At the takeoff go-around position, we have the maximum thrust we can get from the engines. So that we'll do for our takeoff. So we will accelerate, and as soon as we reach a takeoff speed, we can lift the nose again with the side stick, pulling it backward. The nose is lifting a little bit, and we will lift off from the ground. So as soon as we reach a safe altitude, we can move the thrust levers back 2 positions to the climb position. Climb position is our auto thrust position. So in that position the aircraft is controlling the speed automatically, or the thrust, which is the computer is giving to the engines. So at this position we will keep it initially and leave it basically there. So after that we will control the speed via the speed window here. We can give the computer a certain speed, and the computer will control via the auto thrust system the speed during the flight. So during the whole flight usually we keep it into this climb position. As soon as we come to our landing, usually we go to a manual thrust to control the speed manually. So in this reach from climb to 0, it's a manual area where we can control the speed of the aircraft manually. Around 20 to 30 feet above ground, we can move the thrust lever backwards to our 0 position, which is idle. Lift the nose a little bit with the side stick again to break the descent rate, and usually we should get a very smooth touchdown on the runway. As soon as we are on the runway, we can use our reverse thrust to support the braking. For that we will move upward these clips here, and then we can move the thrust levers further backwards. And then what happens then? At our engines we have little flaps which move open, and then the thrust is not directed to the back, it is directed forward. So if we direct the thrust forward, we can support the braking, which is quite good. And that's basically it already for our primary flight controls. Our secondary flight controls is the gear. So as soon as we lift off from the ground, we want to retract the gear, which is down here, so there's less resistance against the air. We just move this switch a little bit outside, move it up, and the system will retract the gear automatically. Same thing if we're going back to the landing, we of course have to extend our gear, and we'll do it around usually 2000 feet, which is around 600 meters above ground. We will extend our gear. Down here in the shadow, I think you cannot see it on the video. I will give you another clip to see what I'm doing down here. These are our flaps. So what do we need our flaps for? We need a flap to reduce our speed further. The slowest speed we can go without flaps is around 200 knots, which is around 360 kilometers an hour, which is way too fast to go for the landing. So we can extend the area of our wings with the flaps. So if I go back to 1, 2, 3 or even full, which is the maximum position of the flaps at the front of the wing, we have the so-called slats, which are extended forward, and the flaps at the back of the aircraft, which are extended as well. So we're extending the area of the wing, and so we can fly a little bit slower. So usually our speed for the landing is around 240 kilometers an hour, so that is a lot easier to land the aircraft. So the flaps we will need for the takeoff as well for the landing. Another secondary control are the speed brakes, which are down here. The speed brakes can help us to decelerate in the air, so basically it's a brake, an air brake. The speed brakes are on top of the wing. We can move them upwards, and as soon as they are upwards there's more resistance in the air, so we can slow down the aircraft, which is sometimes quite important, especially big airports. They want to keep you high in the air for a really long time, especially for noise reasons, so we are further away from homes and apartments to disturb the people and the citizens. So at the very last moment they say, okay, now you can descend to the airport, and then it has to go very fast, so we extend our speed brakes going up, and the aircraft can descend a lot faster than without the speed brakes. Okay, so now I want to show you our most important instruments we have here. So the most important one is the primary flight display, which you can see here, but I will show you another picture of it so you can see it in detail. What you can see is here a blue area and a brown area. The blue area represents the sky basically, and the brown area represents the ground. So we can see all the time without seeing visually outside. Even if we are in the clouds, we can always see on this instrument how is our position in the air. So is our aircraft like in a left turn, in a right turn, is the nose up, is the nose down? So that we can all see here, and this is really important to understand this instrument because most of the time we cannot see outside, so we can land also in bad weather with the help of this instrument. What you can see here as well in this window on the left side is the speed window. So here we can see the current airspeed of the aircraft, which is shown in knots. So usually you take to get the speed in kilometers per hour, you take the knots times 2 and subtract 10%, and then you have the speed in kilometers per hour. On the right hand side we have the altitude in feet. Also the feet you can calculate quite easily in meters. So if you divide the amount of feet by 3, then you get the amount in meters. On the very far right side we can see our rate of climb or rate of descent, so we can see how fast we are climbing. So it's shown in feet per minute. Usually after takeoff we have around 3,000 to 4,000 feet per minute climb rate, and during climbs later on, because the air is getting thinner and thinner, so we cannot climb as fast anymore, it is around 1,000 to 2,000 feet per minute climb or descent rate. Down here we have our course, our heading basically, in which direction we are flying. So in aviation we always steer according to our course, to our compass rose. So if you imagine the compass rose, so we have north, east, south and west. So north is the direction of 360, east is the direction of 090, south is the direction of 180, and west is the direction of 270. So if you give our direction in degrees heading, everybody knows what to do basically. So if the controller says, okay, Lufthansa cargo 123, fly the heading of 240, we have it here on our navigation display or down here in the primary flight display. We know where the course of 240 is, so we steer our nose or heading towards the course of 240. So this is a really good system to give instructions from air traffic control to the aircraft, so everybody knows basically what to do. So this is already our primary flight display. Most important things I just told you. Here we have our navigation display. Into the navigation display we can load our route we want to fly. So basically before every flight we do get a flight plan, and on this flight plan there is the routing on it. So this flight plan is not like giving directions like we have in Google Maps, where we have like street names and like city names. In aviation we work with GPS waypoints. So there was somebody who introduced the GPS waypoints and invented names of 5 letters for different GPS waypoints, and every GPS waypoint has certain GPS coordinates, and everybody in aviation, every aircraft, every flight controller, every airline, they all know all the GPS waypoints we have on the Earth. So if the air traffic controller tells us to fly to a position, certain good position, for example here in Frankfurt, famous waypoint is Kerax. So air traffic controller tells us Lufthansa Cargo 123, flight to position Kerax. We put into the computer Kerax, and the aircraft knows where this point Kerax is. So the aircraft knows the GPS coordinates and will lead us to this waypoint Kerax. In between the waypoints, the GPS waypoints, we have like the highways for aircrafts. So this is basically what the flight plan is all about. We have a flight dispatcher who is planning our flight from A to B, maybe from Frankfurt to Nairobi, for example. So he will look on the route and see where are good winds, where maybe fly, where are the restrictions. So he basically looks what is the best routing, and then along the routing he will look for the GPS waypoints and see which GPS waypoints he can connect basically, and then he's developing a routing for that day. So on our flight plan we can see all the GPS waypoints, and we can program our flight computer, put all the GPS waypoints inside, and the computer knows where to fly, so we can use our autopilot system to fly automatically along that routing. So as soon as we programmed our flight computer with all the GPS waypoints from the flight plan, we can see our routing here on the navigation display, which is quite helpful to see how our routing is continuing. So next important instruments are here in the middle, which are our multifunction displays. So on these displays we can see all our systems of the aircraft if they're working properly. So we can see our hydraulic page, we have a fuel page, we have electronic page, we have the air condition page. So here we can see all the systems of the aircraft to see if everything works normally. And most important, here up in the upper part there are the engine instruments, so we can see basically the fuel flow of the engine, actually the exhaust gas temperature, so the temperature at the rear of the engine, and we can also see the current thrust setting of the engine. Right guys, so that's basically it of the most important instruments and flight controls. Another important thing to understand is our autopilot, which is up here. With this panel we can control the autopilot. So I already told you about the speed selector. So with the speed selector we can control the auto thrust. If we move it upwards to maybe 250 knots or 220 knots, so whatever speed we put inside here, the auto thrust is controlling the thrust to keep that certain speed. Next thing here is the heading, so our course. We already told you about the courses of north, east, south and west. So here we can put our course, for example 180 flying towards the south, so the autopilot is rolling the aircraft into right or left turn, and then going into the southern direction. Next thing is the altitude. Here we can control how far the aircraft is climbing. So right now in the window there's 10,000 feet. So as soon as we switch on the autopilot is climbing towards 10,000 feet and keeping the altitude of 10,000 feet. Also here on the further right part, we have we can control the vertical speed basically, so we can control how fast the aircraft is climbing towards the altitude, for example here of 10,000 feet. So this is a really good system which can fly the aircraft completely automatically. Basically it can even do a landing, the autopilot system. The only thing the autopilot cannot do is a takeoff and also landing in bad weather, so there's always something what the pilot has to do, luckily. So still we try to fly a lot manually to train our skills. So usually for the landing we always switch off the autopilot to train our skills and do the landing manually. Up here we have the overhead panel of the Airbus A320. In the video you cannot see a lot, but I will show you another picture so you can see what is around here. Basically we can control all the systems of the aircraft up here. So what we already could see here in the displays, like the hydraulic, the fuel, electronics, the air condition, we can do all up here. Usually the aircraft controls all the system automatically. So when everything is working correctly, we don't have to deal a lot with the overhead panel, let the aircraft do the work basically. But here's also, we can switch on and off all the lights, the exterior lights, the seat belts and no smoking signs, and we can also control the temperature of the cabin. So if it's too cold or too warm, we can control it from up here. Also the temperature here in the cockpit basically. So if you have any further questions to this overhead panel, please just go ahead and ask me. More than happy to go into more detail of the overhead panel, but I would just want to leave it and to that basic explanation. I hope that it's okay for you guys. So guys, I think basically I explained the most important parts here in the flight deck. Of course I could continue like this for hours and go into more detail, but I think then it's getting too boring for you. As I said before, if you have any further questions about the flight deck, please go ahead and ask your questions. More than happy to explain into more detail, but I want to put a stop at here, go into a more practical part. I think I'm gonna beam us now to the takeoff position, and then we'll do a short flight here around Frankfurt. So see you in a minute at the takeoff position. So guys, hello again. Now we're at the runway 25 center here in Frankfurt, where we're gonna do now our takeoff. But first we have to do a few things to configure our aircraft for the takeoff. And for that we have our takeoff checklist here in the middle. So first thing we have to do is putting the auto brake to the max position, which is right here. So what does the auto brake? In case we have to stop our takeoff, so maybe if we have an engine failure or anything else, we will put our thrust lever to the idle position, and the aircraft automatically will slow down the aircraft in the best possible way. So this helps us to slow down on the runway and abort the takeoff. Next thing to do is switching the signs to on. So this is the seatbelt signs and the no smoking signs. So in the cabin everybody knows they have to prepare for takeoff. There was a sign putting on their seatbelts and to stop smoking, of course. Next thing to do is putting the flaps into the takeoff configuration, which is in our case now position flaps 1. So now you can see on the display the slats moving forward and the flaps moving into the other direction. So now the wing is a little bit bigger, the area is a little bit bigger, so we can take off more easy and at a slower speed than without the flaps. Next thing to do is the takeoff configuration test. So the aircraft tests all the system if we are ready for the takeoff. This is this switch. I will just push it, and now it says takeoff config norm. So it says the aircraft is basically ready for the takeoff. So now switching on the outside lights, the exterior lights, so everybody can see us. We're already cleared for the takeoff from the air traffic control. So basically I would say we'll go ahead, do the takeoff now, and I will give you further explanation as soon as we are in the air, show you around my hometown in Frankfurt. So let's get started. Switching on the park brake, just giving the right altitude here in Frankfurt and the correct course. So now we're moving and increasing the thrust slowly. So aircraft is moving. Now we're giving full thrust. Airspeed is rising. 140 knots. And pulling the side stick backwards. Nose is rising, and we are climbing, and we are in the air. Retracting the gear. Okay. Going to the right towards the city of Frankfurt. Down here is still the airport of Frankfurt. We have reached our traffic pattern altitude, 1,900 feet. Leveling off. Here to the left, it's a mountain range here in Frankfurt, so-called Taunus, which is a really nice area to go hiking a bit. And here in the front, you can see the river Main, which is a river going through the city of Frankfurt. Alright, so now we are on the so-called downwind. So here to the right there's again the airport. Right in front of us there's the city of Frankfurt. Now we're flying a little bit towards the city. Frankfurt has a really nice skyline. 14 of the 15 tallest buildings in Germany, they're all situated in Frankfurt. So also the tallest building of Germany is situated here in Frankfurt. So this is really the biggest attraction here in Frankfurt. The really nice skyline. We also call it Manhattan. So you have the river Main, and it looks a little bit like Manhattan in New York. I hope you can already see all the tall buildings here around. Here is the central station of Frankfurt. And right over here there's the Commerzbank Tower, which is the tallest building in Germany. Alright, so now we're turning back to the airport, going to the right. I'm retracting already the landing gear. Extending the flaps further so we can reduce our speed further. Going to flaps 3. And now further to flaps 4. So now the voice tells me that we are 1,000 feet above the ground. Coming closer. airport. I'm aiming towards the northern runway so you can see a little bit more from the airport. Just in front of us there's the soccer stadium of Eintracht Frankfurt, which is the local soccer team here. So right in front of us there's the airport. You can see 3 runways we have here, and there's a 4th runway further in the back, which you can see, which you cannot see right now. Switch on again now the auto brake, which will help me to decelerate the aircraft on the ground. So now to our left hand side there's already the airport, the big terminal, biggest airport here in Germany. Of course it's really hard time right now, not a lot of traffic going on during the corona crisis. A lot of aircraft are parked. So now there's a voice telling us how far above the ground we are right now, so we can hear how fast or how quickly we are coming closer to the ground. Concentrate to do a landing, which is not too bad. 100. Closer now, 50. Reducing the thrust to idle, lifting the nose a little bit. Thrust and decelerating on the runway. Thrust back to idle and stopping now on the runway. Alright guys, that was basically it. A little introduction to my office, a little flight around my hometown of Frankfurt. Really hope you enjoyed it. Really hope you have some further questions now, which I'm really happy to answer now. So I'd say let's just switch to our video chat and go into a personal contact so I can get to know you guys. I'm really looking forward to it. So I'll see you in a bit.